Fab. Thanks, Gareth and Owen, for joining me to have a chat about GRAV and bringing it back to the torch for the 200th performance celebrating 10 years. If people somehow haven't heard of GRAV, what's the show about?
Well, it's the life of Ray Gravell, who was a wonderful rugby player. Played for Wales, the British Lions, Barbarians, and so on, Irish Wolfhounds as well. But it's about so much more than that. It's about his life. He had a really rich life. He was a very interesting man. He had many obstacles in his life, but one of the wonderful things about Ray Gravell was that he turned negatives into positives. So you see that. And it's about his family life as well and how important that was to him. And I think that's the reason that the play has travelled so well. It's because of universal themes. You know, it's not just a Welsh story. So people in America and Australia and Scotland and England, you know, have really taken to it.
That's right, because it's not enough just to sort of have a string of anecdotes about his life. You know, a play has to say something. So it's about fathers and sons, I always think. And it's about the relationships between men, between dads and their sons, and I think that's a really universal theme, the fact that you want to sort of impress the person most closest to you, or what happens when you lose that sort of that figurehead in your life. So I've always thought it's about that as well.
Yeah.
Covers so much, and like you say, it's such a universal story. And I remember the first time I saw it, and I've seen so many different iterations of it over the years, an audio version, the S4C adaptation, and like you said, it's travelled all over the world. Tell us a little bit about where it's been and who you've met along the way.
Well, most recently, this year we were in Adelaide, and that was just fantastic. You know, we were there in Australian summer, and with a character who we wondered if people would know or would come. We found ourselves sharing a venue, a small theatre on the edge of town with Mark Thomas. He's one of my comedy heroes, so that was brilliant. And we just, I don't know, the stars just seemed to align with it. We did a press show on the first day, and I think we knew within an hour of that finishing that we were going to be all right, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
The response was incredible. How many shows? We ended up adding
11 shows. So we went out there thinking we were going to do 23 shows. We ended up doing 34, and it just took off. And yeah, I mean, we were in a small space. It really suited the play.
Purpose built as well.
Yeah, and it's not a rugby state, you know. It's a very much an AFL state. So people were telling us, oh, you need to take this onto New South Wales and to Queensland, which we might well do one day.
We did a performance for the Governor of South Australia, which was quite amazing.
Yeah.
And
in terms of other places, I mean, you know, it was wonderful for me. You know, it was one of my dreams to perform in New York. So to perform in New York City was terrific. Washington, D.C. We've also been to Lincoln, Nebraska, and also to places like Edinburgh. And I remember the first time, actually, I was here, around this area, warming up when Pete Doran walked in, and he was up there in the gantry, and he said, oh, we're going to take you to Edinburgh. And I thought, oh, that's going to be our first major test. Because in Wales, you think, all right, he's a favourite son, you've got to get it right. But in Wales, you've got that support. In Edinburgh, there's going to be people there who have never heard of him, you know.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's the strength of the play, really, is that it's been able to go to these places, and hopefully to some more in the future, and do well.
And I think two that stick in my mind, New York was amazing, doing it on the Friday night, and then walking out of the back door of the theatre to get a bit of air and opening it and just seeing yellow cabs and steam and the bright lights. You just thought, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then when we did a performance for the Welsh rugby team just before they beat England, the Grand Slam, that was unbelievable.
Yeah. I was watching a little TV clip of that the other day. It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? Like, what more could you want for this play than for the Welsh rugby team to see it and appreciate it and credit it for, you know, for some of their good work as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
The day after in the press conference, Robin McBride said in his pre-match press conference, We went to see a play last night at the stadium, and if we perform on Saturday, like Gareth Bale performed at the theatre last night, then it doesn't matter if the roof's open or closed, we're going to smash England.
Yeah.
And that was just unbelievable. My phone exploded.
Yeah.
I remember going to Spa next day, and it was on the back pages of every newspaper in the country.
Yeah. At the same time, England had a pep talk from John Terry. So I think it was Rupert Moon who said, oh, you know, we've got Grav, they've got John Terry, you know, there's only one winner, that kind of thing. But it was Robin who saw it in Llanelli, and that's how that came about. Yeah. He saw it, and of course he was very, very close to Grav. I mean, Robin took over as the sword bearer at the National Eisteddfod, so they were very close, and he just felt, watching the show, that it would help the boys. I have to tell you, the show was incredibly hard to do, because for one thing, you walk out and you could see them, you know, you can see the squad and Warren Gatland and, you know, all of these people, Alan Wynne, George North. So that was hard, but also because I'm not sure how many times rugby players go to the theatre. So it was as if they didn't know how to behave.
Totally.
And with Grav, I mean, there's a lot of jokes about the big hits and all of that, and you're expecting a reaction. It was tumbleweed. I thought they've hated this. You know, it's as if they've been forced to come to something, to sit there and watch it bored. But at the end, I mean, they were wonderful. You know, they really, really enjoyed it.
I saw one or two of the players who, when he started, they were sort of on their phones. And then as the play was going on, you just saw them put them away. And then by the end, they were just like that.
Yeah.
And you just thought, and my parents were there. And I thought, yeah, I think that's one of the first times when they sort of realised, I guess, just how big it had become.
Yeah, it was terrific.
I love all those memories that are part of it now. And, you know, how did it all come about? Where did it all start?
It started in this studio, actually, because we rehearsed the Norman Conquests in here. So I did that with Pete in 2009, I think that was.
Wow.
I think so. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, so it started in here. I was driving back from Cardiff, and Catrin Aron was with me, the wonderful actor Catrin Aron. She was in the Norman Conquests, and I had this big ginger beard for Norman, and someone had said to me, oh, you look a little bit like Ray Gravell. And as we are driving, it was just serendipity, as we're driving back here, Catrin was talking to me about the importance of actors having one-person shows. So if times get hard, as they have done over the last 10 years, you can, you know, just do your show.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a brilliant idea. And we were driving past Kidwelly, that area, and I looked across and I went, oh, Ray Gravell. Yeah. And that's when, in here, I spoke to Pete Doran and I said, I've got this idea about doing a show about Ray Gravell. Don't have a director, I don't have a producer, I don't have a writer. And Pete sort of laughed at me, but the following day, he came in and he'd clearly been thinking about it. And he said to me, you know that idea about Ray Gravell? I want to do it with you. The Torch will produce it, I'll direct it, and we need a writer. And that's when I asked Owen if he'd come on board.
Yeah, and I remember the phone call. And I knew, obviously I knew of him, but that's one of the things I think I enjoy most about being a writer is the research, is the getting to grips with somebody. And I read a couple of articles and I read a book, and I think it was reading the first book and seeing the journey his life had been on, and I just thought, yeah, absolutely, I can do this. I mean, it's in many ways it's a short life, but it's the perfect dramatic life. It just has everything: comedy, tragedy. I've been approached to do other people since, and some have worked, and some you just like, no, there's no hook here. But with him, I knew straight away I could do it.
Yeah. And what was really important to us was getting the family's permission to get them on board.
Absolutely.
And we spoke to several people who said, oh, you don't need to. You don't. I think in Wales especially, you have to. Because if that family had said, we weren't happy with this, then this goes nowhere. You know, so to get them on board, and they have been absolutely terrific. They are so supportive. They came to Edinburgh, they came to New York. Yeah, you know, so they've seen it a few times. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And we didn't do anything on it until we had their blessing. We didn't.
No.
We did wait, you know, and that was important. And I remember when we had the call to say they were up for us doing it, you're like, right, okay,
yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, the three of you, you know, you two and Peter coming together, there was that absolute magic creatively. And as you say, the respect that you've treated Grav's story with, it absolutely comes across in every performance, and I think that's part of why it has that connection with the audience, because we feel the truth of it. And you've said a little bit about some of the people you've met along the way. You have met so many people who knew the real Ray.
Yeah.
What have been some of the absolute highlights?
I remember the very first time we did it. We did the launch at Parker Scarlets, and that was nerve-wracking. But when we went to Mynyddig Garrig, where he was from, and myself and Pete sat at the back row of this
Village Hall,
and it was packed, and somebody turned around to me and said, "I hope you've got this right, because everybody in here either knew him or loved him," and then smiled and turned back round,
Yeah.
and you go, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
No
They
pressure.
don't like
No,
this,
no
I'm going to get
pressure.
lynched.
Yeah.
So it was that sense of, absolutely had to get him right. And that's
Yeah.
where your research becomes all important, because you're dealing with, number one, you're dealing with somebody who can't speak for themselves anymore. And number two, you're dealing with a dad and a husband. So it's that thing of, the country might feel they own somebody, but you're responsible to their nearest and dearest in the first instance. So, massive.
Yeah, that was a pretty special show in Mynyddig Garrig, because a lot of the references in the play, were literally outside the window. So
Yeah.
Caer Post, where he first started playing rugby, is outside the window. And, the description of Mynyddig Garrig itself, it's all around you. You feel as though you're in his heartland. But in terms of the people, it's been wonderful to meet some of, the people who worked with him. There was one man who came to see the show in Edinburgh, and Molly said, "There's someone here to see you." And of course, in Edinburgh, as you know, you've got limited time, so you've got to get on and off. And this sort of elderly gentleman stood there, so distinctive. He said, "I'm Jim Rennick." And Jim Rennick had that look, he had the tash and then he had the hair on the side. And it was him, but 20 years after the videos that I remembered seeing him, And he had tears in his eyes, and he spoke to me for 2 minutes, and he said, I'm really sorry. He was welling up, and he said, "It's because I never got a chance to say goodbye to him." And that, I'll always remember that, to meet him, Jim Rennick. Of
And
course.
having icons like Gareth Edwards
Yeah.
and JPR and Phil Bennett and Delmy Thomas, having all of them come and see it. I mean, it's been, especially as, lost a few of them over the years. So it was very important that they enjoyed it and that we'd got it right.
Yeah, and DH as well. Got to mention DH because, he's a big friend of Grav's and the family. And he came to Edinburgh to see it with the family and also with Adrian Howells, another big friend. And, for DH to like something, you had to get it right. But, he loved it. And he was a wonderful actor and a good friend. So I'm glad he liked it. But also people from rugby clubs, not just these big stars of the game, but I remember someone coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I haven't cried like that since I was 6." So it's that effect that it's had on people from clubs that would normally not come to the theatre,
And was it Wellenbach where they said it was the quietest the chip shop had ever been because we were on that night? And they said it was something like some high percentage of people who'd never been to the theatre before. And that's been one of the amazing things with GRAV, that we've got people to come to theatres who maybe have never been and hopefully would go again. Hopefully would see it for what it is, that it's the best art form there is.
For those people who maybe don't come to the theatre and haven't seen GRAV, why should they come?
For me, I think it's the performance and it's the story. And it's an intense experience. It's designed in a way that it'll make you laugh, and then it'll pull the rug from under your feet as well at the same point, because that's what his life was. And I think if you just come and you enter into it and you just suspend your disbelief and go with it, then it's a really important story, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember the very first performance, which was here, and I'm stood back there, and the crowd is rowdy. I say crowd, the audience is rowdy. And we had a rugby club in, I can't remember which one, but I think what they expected was for me to walk onto stage tell a few anecdotes. If there'd have been a guitar, play a few songs, rugby songs, that, like an evening with Max Boyce almost, you know, that kind of, that's what they expected. Yeah. So to start there and then take them on this journey of a play, it was, I mean, they loved it at the end. It was wonderful. So, yeah, expect the unexpected, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like I said, I've seen it like a good few times now, and every single member of the audience always comes out feeling moved by it, whether they're a rugby fan, whether they're not, whether they've got any interest in kind of Welsh culture or not. It really is one of those stories that has just, how it resonates with so many people.
I remember when we did it in Welsh College of Music and Drama, and I couldn't get a seat, so I sat up in the roof with Peter. Yeah. And you could just see these rows of old blokes watching it. And I suppose when I started writing, I always wanted to be like, to make people laugh and things like that. And actually, the power of moving somebody, to see somebody tapping their wife's leg and getting a hanky off them and wiping their eyes, I think that's important because, you know, often men aren't terribly good at doing that. And I think something that makes them open up and empathise, and I think that's been a really great thing with the play. People have come in thinking, as Gareth says, it's just going to be a string of old stories and laughs, and they leave with a very different experience.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be back in the studio where it all started?
Oh, I love it. I mean, it takes me back instantly, and even, you know, if I was to go into the dressing room now, just the smell, it takes you back 10 years, you know. And this is where it all, this is its home really. Absolutely. For me, you know, GRAV, the play, even just looking round and you get a feel for the place. It's just, I can't wait to be back. I can't wait to be back on Frankie Bradshaw's set, which we haven't done since 2018, I don't think. So that's going to be terrific. It gives me a nice warm feeling.
Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I remember sort of sitting out in the audience with the script, sitting in the empty theatre when we were first doing it and just following the lines and just thinking, this is what I've always wanted to do. You know, it's why I wanted to be a playwright from the age of 5 or 6. So to actually be sat in here and to be watching something coming together that you've done. I mean, we'd done stuff before, but this was different scale. And there was a sense from pretty early on that it was going to be something magical as well. So, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, not many plays anywhere stand that test of time. 10 years touring, you know, coming up to 200 performances. How does that feel?
It's great. I mean, you know, we've done other stuff that's been really good and disappeared after a few. And I've seen so many amazing plays in Wales over the last few years that should have longevity, that should be seen more, but they aren't. But there's just something about this one that just keeps going. And I think it's the subject matter, and I think it's the fact that in the years since his passing, his legend hasn't waned. If anything, it's grown, and it's that thing. But it's hard to say why it's been such a success, and it keeps going.
I think that's true, though. It's a lot to do with Ray, and what surprises me with this play, not just that it's carried on for 200 shows, 10 years, but the amount of people that will have seen it more than once. Because you might have a favourite play, but you'll see different versions of it. You know, if you like Under Milkwood, you'll see different versions of Under Milkwood, or Hamlet, or Macbeth, or whatever it might be. Very rarely do you get people coming back to see the same
actor,
same
director,
exactly.
Same writer.
So that, and I think it's because people miss him, and this is a link to a version of him. You know, they want to hear these stories again. I think you said once, it's like putting on a nice warm coat when you revisit. That's the feeling, you know. It's reading your favourite book, watching your favourite film. When you want that comfort, perhaps, you feel as though, I know that I'm going to have a good night. You know, I think that's very, very special. So, long may it continue.
It's all of that, but also you're brilliant. The play is brilliant.
Yeah. I mean,
Peter's brilliant.
Yeah, there is that, and I have to say, it's one of my favourite things to do is to walk and sort of recite my lines, you know. And I can't do it in the house. I just can't. So I need to get out. And it is such a pleasure to say. It's not work, you know. When actors are learning lines or going over lines, it feels like work sometimes. This one doesn't. It's like poetry, and one of the highlights, again, it wasn't on stage, but there are two actually, both in America. I managed to do that in Central Park in New York, which I will never forget, reciting GRAV in Central Park. You're going, how has this happened? And the other one, I did it then in Washington, D.C., and you were there, and I'd said to whoever we were with, I'll see you in town. I'll see you in Washington. I'll see you in town. Give me a couple of hours just to get, the lines back in my head, because I hadn't done it for a while. So I went in, I got off the tube, I looked up, the Capitol is there, and Lincoln is down there. So I thought, I'll walk towards Lincoln. So I'm reciting GRAV to Abraham Lincoln, or his statue anyway. And I turned round, and as I'm coming back towards the Capitol, I can hear this music, this orchestra's playing. This is bizarre. And it was Finlandia, which to, all Welsh people is Dros Gymru'n Gwlad. And I've got goose pimples thinking about it. I'm walking there and I'm reciting the story of one of our favourite sons to myself. But they're playing Finlandia. It was just incredible. It was like, he was there.
It is that thing where you remember moments from the last 10 years and you think, how have we got here? How has it come here? Yeah. And I think the thing I'm most grateful to it for is, like any writer, you want to find what is my style, what is my voice. And GRAV is just where it all came together. I started out as a kid writing poems, and I always loved writing poetry, and then moved into theatre and prose and stuff. And it was early on that, knowing how much the Eisteddfod meant to GRAV, and how he said once he'd like to have been a poet. Yeah. So it was like, okay, you've got the license to blend the two here, to bring prose and poetry, and just to try to do something that's as nice to listen to as it is to watch. And I think the response to it made me realise, that's my style. That's what I do now, and I've never moved away from it. It's always the thing that you're going to be linked with the most, and as time has gone on, I'm happier and happier with that. To be known as the person who wrote this play is great, and if you haven't seen it, you should come and see it, because it's a special thing, I think. It
is a special thing, and it's a special theatre, and celebrating 200 shows will be very special here. And, I always go to the bar afterwards so we can have a chat there and reminisce, and you can tell me your GRAV stories.
Absolutely.
Everyone's got one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or when we're back for the 500th, and Gareth is doing it on his Zimmer frame. Yeah. You'd be more than welcome to come to that as well if you can't make this one.
Yeah, come now.
So just nice to be back. I mean, there's nothing better than a theatre.
Thank you both. I've got goosebumps listening to you both. It's so infectious. It's gorgeous. Thank you.